Hey, how's it going, guys, and welcome to the fourth video in the bass section of this online course. Now, what we're going to be doing in this video is walking through the patch that I used to make the bass in this song. Now, it's a pretty simple bass patch as far as Serum patches go, using square waves and some filter movements and a couple of effects, but that's pretty much it. So what we're going to do now is dive in and make this from scratch. But first of all, I'm just going to play it for you in the track and then solo it so you know what we're working towards. Okay, so we've got an empty Serum patch here, and to pull up the square waves that we were using, we're going to come into Analog, go to Basic Shapes, and then scroll through the wavetable position to find the square wave just here. We want to put this over onto oscillator B as well, so in order to do that, we can do copy oscillator A to B, and there we go, we've got another square wave in there. So we're going to drop both of them by an octave. This is where you can control the pitch of the oscillator, with bigger steps being towards the left and then finer movements being towards the right. So we've dropped both of those an octave, and on oscillator B, we're not actually going to have that being sent out of the synth. We're going to be using this purely to modulate the frequency of this wave. Now, we're going to do that using FM synthesis. Now, it's not completely important at this stage to understand what FM synthesis is. It's a really cool thing to go in and learn, but it's not absolutely essential for this tutorial. We just need to know how to apply it. So, all we need to do is come into here and go FM, or frequency modulation, from oscillator B. That doesn't need to have any volume applied. This is now applying frequency modulation to this oscillator. So, let's have a listen to what that's actually doing. So right about there, it just adds a really nice bit of grit to the sound, I think. So we're going to leave that there, and we're not going to have that in for the whole time. And I'll show you, we're going to modulate this when we get later into this patch. But for now, let's move on to the filter. So we're going to stick with the low pass filter that we've been using for the rest of the tutorial. And we're actually going to bring this down using an LFO instead of using an envelope this time. So what we're going to do is we're going to route oscillator 1 to the filter cutoff. Make sure that's just going one way, as we have been. And pull that into this kind of position. And this is the kind of thing that's going to take a little bit of tweaking once you've got your patch done to get it sounding exactly how you want it. But essentially what we want to do now is make the LFO bring this filter cutoff down from here to here over the course of this time. And I'm going to double click to insert another breakpoint, and you can have really sort of fine control over this. And this is the kind of shape that I want the filter to come down in. Okay, now the first thing to address is the fact that when I hold down that note, you can hear that the LFO is oscillating, or it just keeps repeating. Now that's not what we want. So what we can do is we can put this LFO into envelope mode. And what that means is it just plays through once and then it stops, which is fantastic. Cool, so inside this filter what we're going to do is add a little bit of resonance, some drive, and some fat. Now I'm going to compensate with the volume for that. So that. There we go, that's starting to sound pretty good. What we want to do is we just want to cut off the end. You can sort of, as I hold the note down, if you've got good headphones or speakers, you can hear that sort of rumbling away below 17 hertz. 17 hertz, which you shouldn't be able to hear, but you can hear some sort of rumbliness, and you can see it on here. So we want to get rid of that. It's probably the drive that we're adding and the resonance. So let's take the sustain all the way down, and we're going to push that up a little bit. Cool, so that's just going to get rid of that tail. Cool, so envelope number 2 we're going to use to bring the frequency modulation down. And actually, what we're going to do is, this is the position, sorry, let's get rid of that for 1 second. This is the position that we kind of like it, because it adds that grit. What we want to do is we want that to just play at the start, and then we want it to come back down to 0 for the rest of the sounds. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply this envelope, and you'll remember the white dash is where the modulation finishes, and the end of this blue line just here is where the modulation starts. So we want it to start about there, and then we want it to come down according to this envelope when we press that note, and it just adds a little bit of grit to the start of that note, which is really cool. Now what we want to do to give this a little bit more low end is add in a sub oscillator. So if we click on here and we click on the square wave, because that's what we're using, we're going to drop sub by 2 octaves. So let's have a listen to that. Now we can hear some fuzz coming from the sub. What we want to do is make sure that's going through the filter. And the way that we do that is by clicking just here. So we've got oscillator A, oscillator B, noise, and sub oscillator, and these need to be selected if you want them to come through the filter. There we go, that's starting to sound good. Now what we're going to do is add some effects. Now, I really like this hyperdimension effect, although you need to be really careful with using it on basses, because basses should be in mono, and this can add a little bit of width, and if you use too much, it can sound really strange. So we're going to take that all the way down for the hyper section, and the dimension, we're going to take the size down. We don't want it to be massive, and we want the mix knob to be just up, because you can hear that starts to go a bit stereo and wide, which is really cool, but it's not really a bass effect unless it's really used in moderation. And to combat that, what it's useful to do is take a utility, put that on your channel, and go into bass mono. That's going to make sure that the real low frequencies are staying in mono for you. Next up, we're going to put some distortion on, and we're going to go for the soft clip. We want this to be happening pre-filter. There we go. We want to get rid of, we only want this on a little bit. So we're going to pop that up. And then we're also going to apply this envelope to the drive so that that comes down. And it's only on the start of the note. And again, you can tweak these settings to your liking. The final thing that I like to add to bass is a little bit of chorus, and again, really, really subtle. There we go, that's sounding good. Cool, so that is how I made the patch that is used in the song. I'm going to make this available for download, and one of the later videos is going to show you how to install that, and it's going to give you the download link. In the next video, we're going to go through how you can route the macros to an instrument rack in Serum to modulate those nice and easily.